Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to show you how to paint this tropical landscape today. So if you want to learn how to do this step by step, stay tuned. Okay, so to begin this painting, I'm starting on a 12 by 12 primed canvas. Just one coat of gesso is all I used, and I let it dry before beginning. Of course, you can do this on a smaller or larger canvas if you like. Here are some of the colors that I'm going to be using today: phthalo green, light ultramarine blue, and of course titanium white. I'll be adding lots more colors as this painting progresses throughout the video, and of course I'll list them all below in the description box for you. Here I've got my 3-inch chalk paintbrush just to create the foliage and waterfall effects in the background. You can use any other stipple or blending brush of your choice for this if you don't have this exact same brush. So to begin the background, I'm going to start by getting my brush just a little bit wet and then pulling in to load the bottom of my brush with a phthalo green only at this point. I'm going to start at the top of the corners on the left and right, pulling and just blending down, partially down the canvas. Now after I do this, I'm going to pick up some white without washing my brush off, and I'm going to start to create a lighter, softer tone towards the center. So I'm going to continue to do this until it's almost completely covered, and then I'm going to bring it down a little bit lower towards the bottom of the canvas. And then what I'm actually going to do is pick up the canvas and turn it over so it's upside down so that I can easily get to the bottom portion of the canvas. Because of my easel, it's set in there quite tightly and I'm not able to get in there. So you don't have to turn yours upside down unless you are working with an easel like mine today. So I'm just going to continue blending, pulling back and forth with my brush, creating all these different tones of phthalo green with a white, mixing in, making turquoise and aqua shades that are very, very pretty for this painting. So here we go, turning it upside down. I'm now going to begin working on what is going to be the bottom of this painting. So I'm just going to pull in some of my turquoise color here that I made with my phthalo green and white. And then I'm going to brush across for the water. So we've got a really beautiful magical pool here from all those waterfalls, and you can instantly tell that's water. Looks like there's some ripples in the water and some streaks. And then I just take a little bit of my white and I pull back and forth, just sliding gently with my brush. Okay, let's turn it right side up again. And I'll get it set in the easel so it's nice and sturdy for me, and I can continue painting along here. Now just with a little bit of water and white, I've still got quite a bit of paint left in my brush, so I don't need a lot of paint to add. I just want to lightly fill this in, and then we'll get started on the next step. Okay, so for our next step, I'm just going right back into my phthalo green only now. I did not wash my brush out. I don't need to at this point because I'm still using the same color. So I'm just going to start tapping and pulling for my foliage and just work out my composition a little bit better. And you can see instantly that it looks like there's waterfalls back there in the distance. So it's very effective, very easy, and this is such a beginner-friendly painting, and this is enjoyable for any stage painter that you are. So anybody watching this, you guys can all paint this. So just keep tapping in lighter and darker. So if you want to have a really strong contrast and depth in your painting, then you'll use a little bit more of the phthalo green, so a thicker amount on your brush, and you'll just leave it there and it'll just dry really dark. But you don't want to use black for this. I think that it's just really nice to have this a rich green tone throughout the painting. I don't use black at all in this painting. In fact, you can create a really nice dark tone without having to use black by just using a thick amount of dark paint, such as dark red, dark blue, purple, or green like we've done here. Now I've got a nice little oval brush here I'm using by Princeton. It's not wet. I'm taking a bit of my neon yellow and a little bit of titanium white. So I'm really just tinting my white with a bit of that yellow, and I'm going to pull and flick down to create another layer for my waterfalls. Now you can paint as many waterfalls as you want. or just one if you want. So you can really change this painting up however you like. I love lots of waterfalls, mostly because I love painting them. I think they're a lot of fun and they're super easy to paint. So like I said before, if you're a beginner painter, you can definitely do this. Just pull and flick down, nice and light brush strokes, not pushing too hard. And like I said, you can go over top and layer and then come in with more foliage if you want. This really gives your painting a three-dimensional look. I'll then apply some across the bottom, pulling and blending with my brush right back into that neon yellow. I've got a little bit of green in my brush now, so when I'm adding this yellow, it's like a really beautiful, bright, happy green color, yellowy green color now. So I'm going to tap wherever I want to have a nice little grassy area, and maybe where we've got some different tones, different colors of green and foliage in here, and maybe where the light's hitting some of these areas a little bit more. I'm going to continue tapping up the right side here, closer to the center of the painting where we really want to have our eyes drawn in. And I'm just going to keep on adding and building up this composition in this landscape. Going back to my palette for more paint. Again, I'm using my neon yellow with just a tiny bit of white and whatever green I'm picking up off the canvas, because some of this paint is still wet. So I'm picking up, and as I'm tapping my brush, I'm kind of blending into the color I previously applied. So it really looks nice and soft and blended, and everything just comes together and flows nicely. Now, if your paint is drying too quickly, don't worry, you can still do this. In fact, it's a lot easier to add highlights on a dry painting or a dry surface. So here I'm just playing around with this fun oval brush. It's kind of my favorite brush right now. And I discovered that as I'm tapping along there, they're starting to look like palm trees. So you'll see how this develops. I start to come in with some palm trees using my Thalo Green, just Thalo Green. Before I begin that though, I'm just gonna dry brush and blend out the remainder of the paint that's in my brush and just give this foggy, misty, blurry kind of look that sets this in the distance, and yeah, it just creates that really soft, misty look that you would see around a waterfall area. Now I'm just picking up a little bit of my Thalo Green here, and my brush probably has a little bit of that yellow left in it, and I'm just going to scumble in kind of a background little hill here that's coming down that's going to have some more waterfalls and some foliage on it. Kind of just looks like a big moss covered little hill. And I'm going to tap in some palm trees now, still using this brush. So it's kind of squished and flat on the bottom because I've washed it out, but you can see how effective it is. Look at how quickly and easily I'm making these palm trees just with a little bit of Thalo Green on my brush. I think this is the easiest I've ever created and the quickest I've ever been able to create palm trees. And I've got all sorts of videos and different brushes and techniques to show you guys if you want to learn more ways to paint palm trees, but by far this is the easiest, and this was completely by accident. I've never done this before, so I kind of learned something new, something different when creating this painting today, which is really fun, and I'm definitely going to use this brush in the future for making more palm trees. So I'll just add up a little tree trunk to each of these palm trees. Maybe not every single one. We don't have to see every single tree trunk. Some of them are going to be hidden, right, with other bushes and foliage and flowers and stuff. So you can just make sure you add a few. And just, again, only using my Thalo Green for my darkest color at this point. Just adding another little palm tree down in here, and then I'm going to add a little bit more of a darker base shadow to the bottom waterfall. Just scumbling and sliding the paint out of my brush right there to the towards the bottom of the waterfall, and then I'm going to pull back and forth, creating some more shadows for my foliage and some ripples in the water. So to create light and shadow and ripples in your water, it's really simple. You just will pull some lighter colors across for some lines. So whatever you want your lightest colors to be, whatever you've got on your palette, you can just use white, but just plain white can be kind of boring. I always advise and recommend tinting your white with another color. And then you can just come in with some darker lines for your shadows. This will really give you that illusion of water. So really just tapping in here to create a little bit more shadows wherever I want, and then pulling and flicking down here for our little hills in the background and more waterfalls. Okay, I'm just about finished with this brush. Then I'm going to take my small flat brush. This is a number 4. You can use any size you want though. And I'm taking titanium white with my light blue violet or light ultramarine blue, same thing. And I'm just going to pull down a bit of this color at the base of the waterfall. And for some lines and highlights in the water, I'm also going to use this color and this brush to create the illusion of some little flowers, some beautiful tropical flowers. I don't know, they could be blue orchids maybe, they could be wisteria, I don't know. I just really like these colors together, so I'm going to create some blue foliage and flowers off to the side, maybe pull down here and flick to create a little waterfall area. Maybe we'll have another little natural pool over here. So this color is really complementary with green. So I love to use complementary colors. I'm really led by color most of all when I'm painting, rather than the composition. The composition tends to just come on its own, but first and foremost, I love color and I like to choose my colors. So these two colors, like I said, look really pretty together. This blue also looks great with peach in a painting, so you can use it. I use this color a lot actually. I find it really, it's just kind of one of those magic colors that looks good with every color in my painting. So I recommend it. It's a great color to have. Now, if you don't have this color, you know what? You can make it almost the same shade by taking ultramarine blue and white. You can even take cobalt blue and white and it'll be very similar. So I'm going to continue adding little flicks here for my palm leaves and just defining some a little bit more. I really liked using that oval brush, but it's a bit big, so I want to come in here and maybe make some of these palm leaves look a little bit different and a little bit wispier. And I'm gonna just kind of outline and define some of these tree trunks, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I'm going to continue adding a little bit of blue here and there for some flowers and some foliage. You can see I've added it to the waterfall area. I think it's a really nice addition to all the green that we've got going on here. Like I mentioned earlier, I love it. It's just so complementary to this turquoise and phthalo green. So I'll just pull and flick a little bit here and there in this painting, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit more white and lighten the areas that I want to be a little bit brighter and have feeling like it's a little bit shallow here, like this is a pool you could go swimming in. So to create that shallow effect, you want to lighten the color of your water. And right here, we're going to create another little pool, just a little bit of white blended into that blue. I blend it out and make sure that it continues to look hazy and blurry back there. And then with a little bit of white on the tip of my flat brush, I'm just going to pull and flick, curve curve over to the center and just pull and drop right down there. And then pull a little line straight across. I'm going to make it a lot lighter and softer, but I'm going to build this up in layers. Before I do that, I'm going to come in with some more waterfalls, and I'm just going to let my hand be a little bit shaky for some of the waterfalls to make it look like they're really cascading down rocks and the slope of the hills. And then in other areas, I'll make my waterfalls just completely straight up and down. So we have a different effect going on, different variations of types of waterfalls, and lots of movement in this painting. And then it's nice and calm in this pool where it all falls down in the foreground where we're standing and looking out. So I'm gonna soften this on and off throughout the video, the waterfall area, and I'll be adding more shadows towards the bottom of the waterfall because it's going to be a little bit darker down there. We can't have light and highlights hitting every area of our painting. We've got to choose those areas where we want to have highlights and then make sure that the rest is a little bit darker. So it's not to say you have to have everything like super bright and super dark for your highlights and shadows. You can use mid-tones to gradually get to your darkest colors. So that's what I want you guys to really try to pick up with these videos, all the mid-tones. So that's just, you know, instead of using black or white for your highlights or black for your shadows, you'll make gray. So you'll have a bit of black, you'll have a bit of white, but you'll also have gray in there. So that would just be an example of what midtones are. So something that just gradiates, any color gradation. So it slowly goes from dark to light, and that's way easier on your eyes when you're looking at something, and it's quite pleasant. So that's what you want to try to convey in your paintings. Make everything kind of soft and blended, and then pick a few parts of your painting where you're going to have it a little bit bolder. Okay, so I'm just pulling and flicking some more lines in here to build up that water effect that I want to have. Just a soft, gentle little ripple. And I'm going to be using some purple. I'm going to be using some more just straight ultramarine blue, and I'll slowly start building up more colors in this painting until we have a nice pop of pink and peach later on after we paint our rainbow. Now the rainbow was sort of an afterthought. I thought I was finished the painting. I had something in mind that I wanted to create, and then I just decided, well, how beautiful would that be to have a rainbow just kind of in the center here. And I love rainbows, I love waterfalls and tropical places, so I thought, why don't I just take all three of my favorite things and combine them into one painting. And it was really, really a lot of fun to work on this, and I cannot wait to see your guys' versions of this painting. Now I've got a little fan brush here, and I'm just going to pull in with light blue and mostly white. I'm going to start from the very top and then use the corner of my brush. So I'm using the full width sometimes to create my waterfalls. And then you can see here just using, and I'm shaking, like really, really shaky. And that's all there is to it to create that cascading, rippled ribbon kind of a look to some of your waterfalls. So you can change it up and just use a part of your paintbrush, or you can use the full width of your paintbrush just to create all those different types of waterfalls. Now I'm going to take just a little filbert brush here just to blend this out, soften, get that soft spray effect, make it look blurry back there. That puts everything else more in the foreground too, so that's how you create that distance and that perspective as well, making things softer and a little bit blurrier, and it'll set them back in the distance. So like I said, I'm going to be working quite a bit here on this waterfall, building up the depth that I want and just getting that balance that I want of light and dark and shadow. And then of course I'm going to come in here and add some more little lines, just pulling with my fan brush, but you can use any brush you want to do this. Now I just grabbed whatever brush was closest. This happens to be a large filbert brush, and all I'm doing with it is just blending and softening. So you don't have to have this specific brush. It's just any other brush that's clean that you can use to soften all these little lines and make the paint look a little bit thinner. Okay, so I'm finished this now, and I'm going to wash my brush out and come in with a little bit of purple. Now what I want to do is add, and I've got my little oval brush here again. I just took a tiny bit of my light blue violet in combination with my purple, a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm just going to apply this over top of part of that blue foliage and just kind of saturate, make the color a little bit more intense on either side. But what I notice is it's not quite the color that I wanted it to be, so I'm going to add some ultramarine blue, and I'll show you how much of a difference that makes in just a few minutes. So I'm going to come over here and start tapping in some more palm leaves. I want to have that waterfall feel like it's back in the distance a little bit more, further away. So the quickest way to do that is to create something in front of it. So I'm just going to use my purple with a little bit of phthalo green, both of those colors to make a nice dark, more interesting color now, and add a few more trees. Now I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, and I've got a small, dry little mop brush, blending brush, whatever you want to call it. I call them mop brushes, and I've got my ultramarine blue with a little bit of my light ultramarine blue. So I get a few little softer tones in here as I tap this around to create some foliage. And I really think that this color is a beautiful addition to this painting. This color is kind of like on a purpley, bluey side, so it works really well. It's complementary with the green. And I'm going to start having some fun with color now. So I'll be adding more and more color. I'm going to add it to the water, create some more depth down here and different tones in the water, just pulling and flicking with my brush, picking up a little bit of the white and blending it out, making the bottom of my waterfall a bit darker. So basically, wherever I want to have a little bit more of this color, I'm going to tap it around and just add as much as I want. And of course, acrylic paint is so forgiving. If you decide, oops, I don't want that, that's too much, I think I went a little bit overboard, you can immediately cover it up with what you had on before, or you can gently scrub it off, depending on how wet your paint still is. If you catch it right away, you can take it off. And if you're scared to take it off, you can just dry it off and go over top with a darker color or a lighter color. I'm going to just add a little bit more of my light blue to the waterfalls and a bit of foliage on either side. It'll be softening as this painting progresses, blending it out and going over with a dry brush effect to make it look really blurry again and like there's got a fine mist, or there's a fine mist over top of it. Got my little filbert brush here. Well, a big filbert brush. It's number 11 filbert brush. It's another one of my favorite brushes. This is Power Acryl or Pro Stroke by Power Acryl. Very good brand of brushes. I just love these. I've got quite a few of these. They were gifted to me by one of my lovely patrons, Lisa. And here we go, just softening the areas where you're going to have that bit of a mist and spray coming up from the base of your waterfalls. I'll go over the top of my waterfall again because the acrylic paint dries as it sets in to the canvas, making it look a little bit dark and dull. So it's very normal to have to go over your highlights from time to time throughout your painting. Don't get discouraged, guys. It's completely normal. It doesn't mean you have bad paint or bad canvas, though applying gesso prior to painting will help the color. As it dries, it'll stay nice and bright and fresh looking like when you first applied it. So it's been hours now since I painted this, and my painting still looks nice and bright, and it hasn't faded or dulled at all. And I can't say it enough. Gesso is really key in keeping your paintings look nice. So If you don't want to be disappointed the next day and look at your painting and wonder where the color went, then just apply even just one coat of gesso. And there are recipes out there. I've seen videos on YouTube for making your own gesso if you want to save money. It's actually really easy. You have ingredients in your cupboard right now probably, and you can make it. So that's something to think about, guys. You can have a look through some videos and make your own gesso. And I'm just going to keep going here, building up my little waterfalls with my blues and a little bit of white. Back to my fan brush again for another fresh layer for some more waterfalls. Again, just using the corner of my brush where I want to have little skinny, narrower ones, and then the full width where I want my waterfalls to be thicker. I'm going to add a little bit with the corner of my brush here at the bottom of the waterfalls for some highlight and some more spray, blending it and softening with my finger. You can use a brush if you want to. And then I'm going to take a bit of my turquoisey color that I made and just start tapping in a little bit of foliage sort of in front of that, setting that back even further. So it just kind of looks like we've got layers and layers of foliage, and it really creates that distance that we want in perspective. I'm going to add a little bit of this down by the water, maybe just like moss covered rocks and different things going on here in the foreground at the base of the waterfall and around the pool. And I'm gonna begin the next step right after this. And I'm taking a little bit of my yellow, green, and white now, adding another tone of green here. So it's more of a yellowy green. It's very pretty, but it's muted a bit and softened with some white. So just adding a few extra little highlights in here and a little bit over here as well. Okay, I'm switching over to my small filbert brush. I'm going to get my dark green purpley color again and redefine my palm trees some more. So I'm bringing this palm tree and the other little one right here more into the foreground. Again, just making everything else back in the distance, making it look farther away. So I'll just do a little bit here to these palm trees. It's amazing how just a small thing like this can really create that 3D look in your paintings and just set everything else back. So I'm going to add a few little brush strokes here, little taps with this dark color. Again, I'm using my Thalo Green. You can mix it with a little bit of purple and the ultramarine blue if you have on your palette. That'll make a really nice color. And just add a little bit more shadow here and there for some depth. Adding some more shadow will make your highlight stand out even more, and all the other colors. Switching over to a larger filbert brush now, I'm going to take a light blue, green, and white, and I'm going to make sort of a turquoisey color, just any kind of color that's lighter than the background that we're working on. And I'm just going to do some little taps here to make it look like there's some few ferns here in the foreground. So just tap, tap, tap using the side of my filbert brush and the end of it. So less pressure where you want them to get smaller, and push a little bit harder where you want to have longer and fuller looking leaves. So I'll just do a little bit here, creating a little bit more interest and a bit of foreground. And then I just decide this is way too dark, so I thought I would break that up a little bit and tap some of that color down in here. Okay, after doing this, I'm going to wash my brush off and get my dark color again on my brush, load it up, and work a little bit more on these palm trees on the left side now. So I'll work a little bit on this one, and I'll work on the other one right above it. So there's a few different brushes that I've been using for my palm trees. All right, over to the right side, adding some more palm leaves here, pushing a little bit thicker and harder. I want these to be a little bit bigger. I don't want all my palm trees to be the same size, right? You've got to create that interest in your paintings. You've got to have some smaller trees and some larger ones. So change it up and make sure they're always different. And then I'm going to use this color and pull from the side towards the center, pushing, pulling, and flicking with my wrist the dark color for some more shadow. This all helps to draw our eye into the center of the painting, and that's what we want to do. We're going to create our focal point in just a little bit, of which of course is going to be the magical rainbow. But I'm going to continue to just add some highlights and shadows here and redefine my waterfall a little bit more. I want to make it really bright. One part of it's going to be really, really bright. So I'm actually tinting my white with the tiniest bit of that neon yellow cool. It probably looks just white to you guys, but it is tinted with a little bit, and I'm not using any water at all. I should mention that because I don't want this to look see-through and faded. I want this to look really bright. So right here I'm using an eventail fan wisp brush, if you guys are wondering. It's got those spaces missing in between, so it kind of breaks up the brush and you get those natural looking lines and streaks through your painting or through your waterfalls. You can do this without this brush, don't worry. You can use a liner brush or just a regular fan brush. And I'm going to add a little bit up top. This is just a fun brush that I like to use. I have so many different brushes, and if you ever just kind of get bored and want to change it up, try using a different brush that you've never used before. Now I do have a filbert brush like this as well, and it's really, really fun to use. I've got a few videos demonstrating all the ways that you can use these brushes, and I'll try to remember to leave a link below. I'm going to soften the base of this waterfall, the second tier, and come in and soften with my little filbert brush, another filbert brush that's dry. All I want to do is just kind of dry brush over that. Here are the colors I'm going to be using for my rainbow, so I'm so excited. I've got my neon orange, neon yellow, neon pink, luminous rose, and of course I've got green and blue that I'll be using just regular. I don't have neon green and blue, but I'm going to start with my neon orange and neon pink to make a very pretty corally color. Instead of using like bright red, I thought that might be just a little bit too intense, so I thought it would be pretty to use my orange and my pink together. So I'm always adding a little bit of white to create some pretty pastel tone to these colors. keeping it nice and soft and faded looking. So one color at a time, I'll be adding, overlapping slightly to the color I previously applied. I'll be taking my neon yellow and mixing it with my blue. And I'm actually using phthalo blue that I'm mixing with my yellow. So you'll get a different blue if you mix your cobalt or your ultramarine blue. I would recommend using phthalo blue instead, together with your neon yellow. Then I'm going to be using my luminous rose after I use my blue. So you just want to paint your rainbow in order and then make sure that it's nice and soft with a little bit of white, like I said. Once I'm done this, I'm going to dry it off completely and then add a very thin coat, dry brush of a white over top to make it look really soft. So here you can see I'm taking my luminous rose, a little bit of light ultramarine blue, and some white. This is the last color that I add. So this is the trick to making your rainbows look really soft and magical looking. It's adding a little bit of white to each color for your rainbow. Otherwise, it's going to dry way too dark. And yeah, that's the best advice I can give you guys. I've painted so many rainbows and they are a little bit tricky, but that's just the best advice I can give you guys, is just tone your colors with a little bit of white. And then if it's still a little bit bright, you can go over top and just do a dry brush of white after. So I'm just getting the balance and the width of all my colors correct here. So I go back and do this for a little bit. I didn't want to leave any of that out. I feel like that's cheating you guys out of learning. I think it's important for you guys to see how long it takes me and how much I go back and forth and correct it and add a little bit more of purple or whatever color it is until I get it just right. So it is normal to take a while. Take your time with this, guys, and you can definitely do this. It's actually a lot of fun to incorporate a rainbow into your paintings, and it's kind of like once you paint one, you want to just add one to all your paintings. It's just so pretty and fun. So I'm gonna make sure that I kind of fade out either end of the waterfalls because they kind of just disappear, right? We never really see the actual end of a waterfall. And then I'm gonna go over top of my palm tree there and just add a little bit more again where I kind of lost that when I went over top with my rainbow. I want the rainbow to look like it's behind, kind of where the waterfalls are, just in front of the waterfalls. So I have to make sure that I bring my foreground trees back again. I took a few minutes there to just dry it off with my hairdryer, and now I can go over top with a little thin coat of white. And I'm going to add a little bit more, and then I'm going to just start to blend it around and scumble some of it off. I'm going to blend it around a little bit behind those trees and over the waterfalls as well, giving this a really soft look. I'm going to add a really thin coat, really thin layer here coat of my pink and white, kind of watered down, and then my luminous rose, which is like a purpley magenta violety color right in here. And then this is when I decided to add a little bit more color to all the waterfalls and everything around. So just taking each one of those rainbow colors, so my luminous rose and white, and adding a little brush over my waterfalls. And then I'll continue doing the same thing with a bit of my orange and white and also my pink and white. Just adding another layer there of my neon yellow and white. I kind of lost that. So I'm just going to go over and brush a little bit of that as well into the water. Okay, so I've got a little bit of that yellow and white left in my brush. I'm going to add a little bit over here and on some of the other bright green areas just to make sure I have that nice pop of yellowy green when it's all dry. I'll start incorporating some more of those pastel colors in and around the water, and then I'm going to come in with some bright pink colored flowers towards the left-hand side at the base of some of these palm trees. I will be adding a little bit of orange as well and softening it with some white, and then we'll see where we go from there, guys. Right here, I'm going to add a little bit of pink. So I've got it on my filbert brush, neon pink, a little bit of white, just to make sure that once it dries, it's going to stay that neon pink. And just tap, 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 a little area here of some beautiful, maybe it's bougainvillea, one of my favorite flowers. And I'll add a little bit down here as well. Wherever you want to have your flowers, you can add them. You could add more than I am if you want. And red is another color that would look really pretty in this. I'm looking at this now as I'm doing the voiceover and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have added a little bit of neon red. Maybe in my next painting. I think I'll be doing part 2 to this painting because I really enjoyed it and I love this kind of sanctuary that we're creating today. So I'd love to do another part to this painting, and I'll be sure to add some neon red flowers somewhere in it. Now right here I decided to take some neon orange and tap it in around. It kind of looked a little bit brown when it was over top of that green, so I'm toning it with just a little bit of white and giving this more of a softer look to it. And then I'm just going to pull a few little lines out right in here, just sort of dry brushing, see through, just to give illusion of maybe another little bit of a stream there and some little waterfalls. I'll do the same thing on this side. And then a fresh coat of white again right here for the top, making it nice and bright again. After adding a little bit more pink to the waterfall, I decided it was just a little bit too dark, too pink on the top. So I just pushed some of that paint off with a damp brush right here, and then I blended around just to make it thinner and softer looking, but we still have that pretty pinky color in there. I'm going to come over with the last few details here, some more white, making sure that it is nice and bright at the top of this waterfall. I want it to be really bright here. So straight white paint, and as I add the finishing touches to this painting, a few little dots and dabs here, making it look like there's a little bit of a sparkle, and just blending some of this out down at the bottom, giving it the last little bit of blending. A few more touches here and there of my light purple, violet, and white. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see your versions of this painting. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. It means the world to me to know that you guys are watching my videos, connecting with me, and enjoying painting along. Have a wonderful day, you guys. Happy painting, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye!